Because I remembered that, I don't know, it was like a meeting at a company car. And tomorrow, I think.
That's it.
Yeah. She's gonna be here for dinner. She left our house, she take us. And I said, what did she do?
That's smart for dogs who you're like to take a bus. I was like, you know, I take that bus. A lot of anxiety.
And I said,
It's 6:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Thank you. Yes.
This is the Shy and Fearful Dog Seminar. There's going to be a lot of video. There's going to be a lot of topics covered in this seminar. So if at any point you have any questions, just feel free to stop me and we can do questions as we go. That's great. I just want to start off by talking about some signs that your dog might be fearful. If you have a fearful dog or if you're working with a fearful dog, most of the time it's pretty obvious, but I want to go over some signals just in case. Some of the more subtle signals are what we call calming signals. So these are the signals that mean I mean you no harm, I'm trying to be nice, they're trying to really diffuse the situation. So that's lip licking, so they're licking their lips, turning away, panting, and panting with this spatulate tongue here, it kind of turns into a bulb at the end. There's some tension there in the tongue. Sweaty paws, you can see the paw prints when they walk, and yawning. As far as fear-specific body language, you might see some dogs that look like these two dogs here. Tucked or low tail posture, crouched body, stiff body, the ears are usually back. You can see this dog right here has dilated pupils, they're kind of reflecting. And that just means that the pupils are much larger than normal. And you always have to look at the context of the situation. If it's a very dark room, that might be normal, but if it's the middle of the day, there's probably something else going on. Whale eye or half moon eye, where you can see the white of the eye, trembling, hiding. A big one for me is not eating. Fearful dogs tend to not eat when they're extremely stressed. And that's sometimes something that we can overlook and think, well, maybe he's just not hungry. But typically, especially if you've got something delicious, like a hot dog or something, and they're not eating, it means something. Submissive grin, like this dog's doing here, is a very nervous, fearful body language. It is cute. Backing away from strangers, hiding, barking at strangers. Approach avoidance, that's where they run up and then they run away. They really don't know how they feel. Lunging at strangers, and a lot of aggression. We're not going to get too in-depth about the aggression portion of fear, but all of the things that we're going to talk about can apply to fear-aggressive dogs as well. But they have a lot of things that are, we have a visitor. A non-fearful visitor. So, fear aggression is a type of aggression that's usually, they don't aggress unless they're provoked. Provoked for them, though, could mean something totally different than provoked from you, depending on how sensitive the dog is. So we're going to watch some videos. This isn't Wisdom, is it? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is Wisdom. Okay. This is Wisdom's foster.
Oh, thank you.
You're going to see why it was so important to foster her and what a great service you're doing.
So she doing well?
She's adjusted. Yeah, she's only been with us since Saturday afternoon, so it's a little bit of an adjustment.
So this is really typical of a fearful dog. You can see the bags under her eyes. She's lowering her head. She's doing a paw lift there. These are all appeasement signals. She's blinking. See those big blinks she's giving us? She's doing everything to tell me, please go away. I mean you no harm. I just want some space. She's looking away. She's blinking harder. She's trying as hard as she can. She's like, this person really doesn't understand. I'm going to get closer to the wall, look away. Everything about that hunched body posture, she's trying to get back. She's trying to get into the wall. Everything about what she's doing is saying, I really don't feel great in this situation. There's a few more videos I want to watch about body language just to make sure that we're on the same page. So this is Casablanca, who came in with wisdom. Now this is like wisdom, but a little more fearful, right? Totally shrinking his body. Look at what these two dogs are doing. I'm going, oh, puppies, what are you doing? And those two are going, oh, we're having fun. Come play with us. Take us out. And Casablanca is saying, this is not happening for me. She starts to shake.
Her breath
She's
is
not-
all
She's not, yes, exactly. She's breathing weird. She's looking away, clear lookaways. She's definitely not as comfortable as wisdom. They're both extremely fearful, but you can sort of see the different levels here.
No, let me ask you about that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she's sitting still, and, I mean, she's shaking a little bit, but wisdom was cowering. So
This dog, I would say, is more fearful because of the fact that she's got all of her legs underneath her, and she's really trying to make herself as small as possible.
I see.
Where wisdom was actually sitting up, and we saw some movement of her feet, which is a bit more promising. Here's a fearful dog video, and I want you guys to watch this one closely because this one's not as obvious to us. It's easy to think that maybe he's just having fun. So this is not the fearful dog, this is the playmate. Okay, so watch their tails here. So tail's up. His tail's a little weird. A little down, curved.
This
It's
is first
curved.
week.
This is their second play date. It's curved more than hers. They're having a little face-off here. Okay, here's where the fear starts. So she tries to play. See how his body language angles away from her? To these really subtle things. Look at his body and look at her body. Tail up, his tail's down and crouched. This is easy to see when we're able to hit pause every 5 seconds. When you're actually in the moment, it's kind of like, are they playing? Do they like each other? Same thing. Look at her tail versus his tail. There's definitely a difference there. So that looks funny, right? Like he's having fun. He actually panicked. And so he ran into us several times during that play day because he panicked and then he just wanted to get out of there and he didn't even look to see if there was anything in his way. He just went. See how his lips are drawn all the way back here? That's a classic fear, that's classic fear body language of the mouth when the lips are pulled all the way back. And see how his ears are pinned back. I can guess his tail is probably down from this picture. And he just has a lot of tension in his body and in his face.
He has his hackles up too, doesn't he?
And he does, yes, he does. Generally speaking, when you see the fur up from their shoulders and it continues down their body, that makes you think more that it's fear. That makes us think more that it's fear. A lot of times if it's just on their shoulders, it can just indicate arousal, but he has it at his shoulders and at the base of his tail. Look at that. Do you see that body posture there? He's totally avoiding, and what is she doing? Yeah, she's probably practicing hunting here.
Is she Is she playing?
She's playing. It's inappropriate play. She's not aggressive. She's in the sense that she's not biting him to injure him. But it's inappropriate play in the fact that she's practicing hunting behaviors and she's practicing a lot of targeting behaviors where she locks onto him. The other thing that we look at in healthy play is the chaser should have their tail up mid-level, and then the one being chased, the chasee, should have their tail up or mid-level. She's got her tail all the way up and he's got his tail down when he's being chased. He changes though, because when he sniffs her or he's moving toward her, his tail does go up. So this is a little bit of that approach avoidance. He's confident and then he's not confident.
So is there any question about which is the abnormal, I mean, not, which is the dog that's got more of the problem here? I mean,
I would say it's probably him because he's exhibiting a lots of different behaviors. He's very conflicted. He's confident and then he's not confident.
She's not really acting appropriate.
She's not acting appropriate at all. But she's remained consistent throughout the play date, which is nice to see. She's predictable, which behaviorally is nice.
But that, when you say she's predictable, and even though she's the assertive one, you wouldn't say, well, she doesn't not get along. She's just
She gets along great. She has lots of play dates, but she does tend to enjoy engaging in this hunting behavior, which a lot of dogs do. If you go to the dog park, I'm saying hunting and it sounds like she's trying to eat that dog, but if you go to any dog park, 75% of the dogs there are hunting. He's also giving her a lot of reason to hunt him. He's acting really sort of squeamish. See how he got a little confidence and he runs up and he gooses her. And she says, "What are you doing?" And then she plays out and he's like, "Oh God, I am so sorry." And he backs off. Confident, backs off. Confident, confident. Every time she looks at him, he backs off. So right now he's totally confident, tail up. Confident, she's moving nice and slow. Oh God, she's sniffing me, tail down.
Tail right down.
Ears pinned all the way back. Oh God, why is she paying attention to me? He wants to sniff her. He just doesn't want her to. He doesn't want her to do any forward movement toward him, which is a little. Oh God. So you can sort of see the fearful behaviors coming out. This is an example of a fearful dog, even though he's not maybe as obvious as Wisdom or Casablanca. Just in the interest of time, that goes on for a long time. And let's watch one more. This is another type of fearful dog. What do you think?
I would back up.
Yeah. Why?
Well, because the dog's eyes are staring right
Yes.
at me.
Very-
Yes.
Eye contact.
Yes.
Yeah.
The eye contact mixed with the fear, but it's this pretty intense eye contact.
The dog looks very still and forward.
Mm-hmm. Very still. This is a fearful dog, though. Look away. Okay, that's what we call a paw lift. It's an appeasement signal. The dog's looking away. That this level of stiffness, this level of intensity is where you start getting into the fear-aggressive dogs. Because it's a little bit different than the cockers that were blinking at everybody and offering all these appeasement signals. And their bodies weren't quite so stiff. That's the whale eye that we're talking about, that half moon eye, the whites of the eyes. Okay. That's fear, aggression. And that dog, was growling in that
I was
video.
gonna say, it looked
I
like
don't
she
have good
was growling.
speakers here, so I'm not doing it, plus the other noises drown out the sound, but that dog was growling in the video. So where do shy dogs come from? How do shy dogs come about? How do they get produced? A large part of shy dogs is genetics. Sometimes we'll see litters of dogs that are just shy. The whole litter is shy. Some breeds are predisposed to shyness. I think Cocker Spaniels, some of the companion breed dogs, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, you see a lot of shy ones of those. You also see a lot of the herding breeds. They're a little bit shyer. They're bred to be a little more suspicious. So German Shepherds, it's common to see those as shy dogs. Some cattle dogs, some Australian Shepherds. The other part of shyness, though, so you've got the genetic, what you've got to begin with. So let's say you've got a kind of shy dog to begin with. Then comes into play puppy socialization. Dogs only have from 3 to 12 weeks to be socialized. When you hear someone say, I'm socializing my adult dog, it's actually an incorrect term. You can't socialize an adult dog. You can teach them to respond differently. You can do behavior modification with them. You can do lots of training. But the socialization process really stops at 12 weeks. And the reason for that is when you have a baby animal born in the woods, it needs a period of time where it's accepting of new situations. So it needs a period of time where a leaf falling doesn't cause it to jump out of its skin and run away, because that would be an extreme waste of calories, and the dog would never grow up to be able to live in its normal environment. But then it also needs a point, nature built in this point of where socialization ends for survival reasons. Let's say the same baby animal is sitting in the woods and it got used to leaves falling, it got used to trees, it got used to seeing deer go by, it got used to a stream going by, and one day a bulldozer pulls in and starts knocking down trees. If this baby animal, now an adolescent adult animal, runs up to the bulldozer and tries to make friends right in front of it, it's going to get crushed, right? Or let's say a new predator comes into this animal's woods and it runs up and it tries to make friends. It's going to get in a fight. Something bad's going to happen. So the animals who have that built-in flight response actually were better able to pass on their genes to the next generation. So they were able to keep that fear portion intact. Does that make sense? We see the same thing in our adult dogs and dogs in general. We've really bred them to have a much longer, a much more extended socialization period than a lot of animals, but it's still 12 weeks. Some breeds, like golden retrievers and labs, have a much longer socialization window. We still say 12 weeks, but theirs probably is 16 weeks, and then they have puppy behaviors for much longer than other breeds. Puppies also go through 2 distinct phases called fear avoidance, one at 8 to 10 weeks, and a second less intense version at 6 to 14 months. During those periods, traumatizing events can have a lifelong impact. So they're especially sensitive during those periods. So a lot of breeders ship puppies at 8 weeks. Well, that's a pretty traumatic event. And depending on the breed, depending on the genetics of the puppy, you may develop an adult dog who has an extreme phobia of airports or crates or taxis or whatever else the puppy decided was the most fearful thing that happened. You don't see extreme fear fully until about 12 to 18 months. It's one of those things that develops like aggression. We don't see full aggression. until 12 to 18 months. Same thing with fear. This is a fearful dog here picture. The avoidance, the looking away. I'm sitting right there with the camera and she's like, I'm not looking at you, the crouched body posture. What are some common triggers for shyness? You guys probably know these if you have a shy dog or have interacted with them. People and other animals, specifically children and men, sudden movements. People who are afraid of dogs tend to move really jerky around dogs, and that can sometimes trigger fear. Or they kind of like move this way and they act a little bit strange. Children also have those jerky movements, so they can be big triggers for fearful dogs. Other dogs. A lot of dogs are not exposed to enough other dogs in those critical socialization windows that we're talking about. And then you end up with a dog who's fearful of other dogs. Which, when we say fear, it could also mean aggression. Inanimate objects like buses, vacuums are a common one, any loud noises, situations, being left alone, that separation anxiety, the vet, anything unfamiliar, anything new. There's a lot of neophobic dogs out there. It's like anything new, it doesn't matter what it is. If they've never seen it before, there's going to be a fear response. And then pain, of course, or the fear of pain can trigger a fear response. So a prom collar or going to the groomer if maybe they got their nail clipped too short one time and then they go to the groomer again and their fear response kicks in even though there's no pain yet because they're anticipating it. Any other situations that you can think of that might trigger fear or that triggers fear in your dogs?
Michelle,
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort out what you're saying. When you're talking about that critical period, if they are in that period and they're exposed to really scary things, that's one thing you're talking about. Are you also talking about dogs who are just not exposed to anything so that they don't learn to cope
Yes,
with things?
thank you. Yeah.
So it's kind of two different things.
It's
that
two
could
different
occur.
things. The one that we see the most is dogs who aren't exposed to things. So in that period when their brains are open to accepting new things, they don't see other dogs and men and children. They only see their immediate family and no other dogs. Thank you. Yeah. And then the other type that we sometimes see are dogs who have traumatic events that happen to them. That's less common. A lot of dogs have one traumatic event that happened to them, so they have one major trigger, and then everything else is less. Yeah.
So you have some dogs that have an overall fear of maybe just about anything.
Yes.
Versus those who just, like I had a dog who was terribly afraid of thunder,
Yeah.
but nothing else bothered
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the situation.
Exactly. It can be very specific like that, or it can be usually the more different triggers that a dog has, the more things that make the dog afraid, the more likely they are to be just generally afraid of new situations. I'm gonna shut this. What do people do that causes shyness in dogs? We're primates. We like to approach ventrally. We like to approach dead on. We do a lot of direct eye contact. And we reach toward them and we're much taller than them, which can be really intimidating. Obviously, you could hit your dog with a newspaper. That would cause some shyness to develop. The things that we do to dogs, though, is interesting. You know, if somebody did it to you, we wouldn't necessarily like it either. So if somebody came from above you and reached down and stared right at you, it might make you a bit uncomfortable. I always think of like on the metro, when you're sitting on the metro and somebody starts staring at you, and then they're like inching closer as it's like rush hour, and you're like, and you're moving away and they're moving closer, and then you're like backed in a corner and you can't go anywhere. It's a little uncomfortable. So let's talk about some different handling techniques that can help you work with these if you have a shy dog or you're working with a shy dog. Tight leash versus loose leash. What does it mean to the dog? Any guesses?
Tension. It's like communicating, be aware, like say if you're meeting another dog with your dog and you got tension on the leash, it could cause him to then say, oh, so I need to look out for this guy then, as opposed to being,
Yeah, it can tell them that you're feeling a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable, sure. What else?
Yeah, I can only speak from my own experience with my dog, and I think the loose leash with him makes him feel that I'm uncertain, that he has control. Because people who know my dog think that he's really great, but he has a lot of these behaviors, and if I walk him, the leash is loose, so he'll just sit down in the middle of the road. My husband, who doesn't do anything mean to him either, has a firm leash and says, Nigel, let's go. And he walks happily.
He walks on a harness.
He walks in a harness.
You might be talking about something different there. A lot of fearful dogs respond well to lateral body pressure, which a harness provides, or to body pressure at all, like the hug machines for autistic people. So he may be responding to that pressure from the harness that may make him feel more confident. With a fearful dog, you are using some leash tension because it becomes unavoidable, because a really fearful dog is going to bolt from you, at which point the leash is tight. So it's really important. And you'll see a couple of videos as we go down, and you'll see some examples of leash tension. The most important thing with the fearful dog is not to give on the leash. So you really want to be an anchor. And then when the leash is loose, that's when you want to move. You're probably going to go one step and then they pull again, and then you just want to anchor. Whatever you do, you don't want to let the dog drag you, because that's not going to give them any confidence, because then you turn yourself into the follower of the really fearful dog, and then the dog goes, nobody's in control in this situation, let's all panic together. So you really want to take the lead there. And a harness is a really good idea. Your body language is really important. I like to be very sensitive to the dog's height. So if I'm working with a very small dog, I like to get down low with them. I also like to think of, I don't know if there's a fake dog out here anymore.
I think they moved.
They moved them, okay. I also like to think of sort of invisible planes on the dog when I'm working with a fearful dog. And you're not always going to be able to do 100%, so sometimes you might break one of these planes, and that's okay. The first plane that I keep in mind is the top of the head. All of my movements toward the dog are going to come below the top of the head. So if you imagine an invisible plane shooting out from the top of my head, if I was a fearful dog, you would only want to move toward me underneath that plane. If you come from above, you may be triggering aggression or more fear at the very least. The second plane I consider is the shoulder. So if you imagine an invisible plane going vertically straight up and down at the shoulder, I try to stay from that point forward on the dog. If you're coming behind that plane, you're going to trigger more fear and aggression. Imagine if you're standing looking out the window and I come up behind you and I grab you. As I'm just walking by, I just keep walking. You're going to be a little tiffed. A confident dog can handle that. For a fearful dog, it's like a meltdown. Body direction, where are you facing? For a fearful dog, the worst case scenario would be to face the dog head on. If the dog's here, you want to be facing away. At the very least like this, but not head on. That's really important. Torso angle is also extremely important. You want to be going this way or straight up and down, never forward with a fearful dog. Always leaning back or straight up and down. So let's watch video 5. So this is an example. We weren't even intending to shoot this video for what we ended up shooting it for. It was something else, and I'll show you when we get there. So we're trying to just film this fearful dog about the stairs, and he decides it's way too fearful. So he's eating, he's kind of okay, but see how he's leaning back? And then he decides it's too much. He's like, there's a video camera up there, and somebody I don't know, and I'm not going. He's not eating. And so I suggest to her that maybe she could film from behind him, and maybe we could get the video that way. He's still very scared of the camera, ears back, tail low. The wagging means nothing. The wagging does not mean I'm friendly. The wagging is an indication of his energy level. I'm feeling kind of medium energy right now.
I don't think that's common. I think we always think of wagging tail.
Sure, definitely. And he's saying I'm feeling kind of medium nervous right now. If it starts going really, really fast, I'm feeling really, really nervous. Because of all his other body language. That's how you can tell what the tail means. Okay, so this is great because we're filming and this person walks through the door and decides to say hello. This happens all the time if you have a fearful dog. Head lowered, tail tucked, he's got the curve, he went a lot more stiff, and he got the whale eye that you were talking about where you can see the whites there. He's got a little bug-eyed. This person reaches down. What happened? Look at his tail. He's terrified right now. He's terrified. And the person has no idea she really likes animals. And she's just going for it. I mean, she's really, you know, and when we talk about torso posture and the plane at the top of his head and torso angle and how you approach, she's doing it about as wrong as you can do. She's going head on, she's leaning over, and she's grabbing his head like this. So for a fearful dog, that's pretty traumatizing. And then she leaves, and he's able to get up after she leaves. He does not want to go back to the stair exercise. He doesn't want to eat. He's nervous now. Now he's looking. He's like, maybe somebody's going to come in that door. I can't eat right now. I've got to watch the door, lady, because you didn't protect me last time. Clearly somebody has to look out for number one. Groveling, exposing his belly. This is extreme submission. He's like, if he could become the floor, he would. He's very fearful, very stiff. And people, all they see is the wagging tail. That's all they see. People see a wagging tail and say, he must want to interact with me.
I think we've been
Shake
conditioned
off?
to think
Yeah.
that.
Of
I
course,
can't remember
absolutely, absolutely. He just did this little thing where he shook off like he got out of a bath, but he didn't. They do that a lot of times to calm themselves down after something invasive or stressful happens.
Well, there's also the dogs that show their belly because they want you to pet it. And I think that confuses people.
Yes, yeah.
But I think most dogs in the context that we see them,
Most,
not exposing their bellies because they want to be
a
petted.
good rule of
They're
thumb,
usually not.
Here.
a good rule of thumb is that any dog that is not your dog exposing their belly is probably doing it from a submission standpoint and not from an I want to be pet. If your own personal dog exposes their belly to you, it probably and can very possibly mean something entirely different. And that's a trust thing. That can mean I trust you and I want to have this bond with you. But for a stranger, it's not what it means, usually. There are exceptions to every rule. So this dog goes on. It happens again, so his tail tucks. He's like, I gotta get out of this lobby. He does the paw lift. He's a little more confident with this person, and I don't know why. I don't know if he knows her or if she's leaning back a little more, but he's soliciting a bit more. He's not just flattening, he's not totally pulling away, he's kind of sticking his head toward her. Now he's mouthing her, and he moved into her, that's a sign of confidence, but there's the lip lick we were talking about. He's saying, I mean you no harm, but I kind of like you. And you can tell that he kind of likes her because he stops. All right, I'm gonna stop this video. I want to get through everything we have. And
Oh, no.
all right, so when you're working with a fearful dog, pitch is really important. Most fearful dogs, you want to go slow and you want to stay at a high pitch. Good dog, good. You can kind of build some excitement there with your voice if you want. What a good dog. You don't want to go low. Low dog vocalizations are the growl or the low bark, both which mean aggression, both which mean stay away. Stay away. Get off my property. Stay away. So when you go, good dog, they don't understand. I'm talking to the two of you because you're the only 2 men.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know if I can hit that off.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it a shot.
This is people training.
We sometimes have people bring in dogs though, and they're owned by men, and it seems like when I do the high pitched thing, they get more nervous, and I'm not
When who
always
does?
sure.
The dogs?
The dogs get more nervous when I come in, and I'm like, hi, because they're used to men.
So rate of speech is really important. And it may be because they're just used to men. Some dogs get nervous about rate of speech depending on what their owners do with them at home. Sometimes I go up to dog and I go, hi, what you doing, little butter cakes? And they're like, oh, no, we're not doing that kind of thing. And so then I change and I say, good dog. And they're like, oh, okay, maybe we could. Maybe we could try this. Yeah.
Are you saying that slower is more comforting, whereas
Slower is a lot of times more comforting for dogs. A
Sounds
faster
calmer.
rate can be good if you're trying to get them to move, because when you build excitement, they tend to move. So like if you're trying to get them to walk, you may want to go, you may want to do the high-pitched stuff. Thank you, little buttercake, let's go. Yeah, this is fun. Timing's important. When they're cowering, shaking, flat out on the ground, a full hot mess, and there's nothing that you can do to fix it, and you go, good dog, then all they're learning is good dog means my life is miserable. And the next time you say good dog, they're like, that lady or man has no idea what they're talking about, because last time they said this, I was having a heart attack and nobody understood. Treat. Where you feed is really important. The more fearful the dog, the further away you want the treat. So a lot of times you can throw treats. The location of the treat. Are you throwing the treat over there? Because if you are, you're going to build trust in the dog. If you're working with a fearful dog and you know enough to throw the treat very far from you, at a distance that the dog feels comfortable enough to eat it, you'll gain trust very quickly, because the dog will say, this is somebody who understands what I'm doing. When fearful dogs get close, you still want to throw the treat. A lot of them do the approach avoidance. They get close, but they don't really know what to do when they get there. And if all of a sudden you start interacting with them really close, they may feel cooped up, and then they could panic. Any fearful dog can become aggressive. So if you have a fearful dog and they're not aggressive, that's great, but you don't want to push too hard too fast.
So you're saying throw the treat even further away from you than the dog currently is, maybe?
Yeah, so like a lot of people want to lure the fearful
Right.
dog in, come this way, and all they learn is when I eat the treat, it pushes me, it makes me more and more and more uncomfortable, and then they just start to feel uncomfortable about the treat. Where if you throw the treat over there and they feel totally confident over there, the dog goes, I kind of like this treat. You feel good, you eat the treat, they throw another one, you feel good, you eat the treat. Strangers we'll talk about in a second. I'm going to skip that video in the interest of time. So this is an example example of somebody working with a dog, a fearful dog, and they're being a little more conscious of their handling. The dog's feeling okay. He's on the door. Throwing the treats back is helpful. The dog's confident. That's great. That's approach avoidance. Approach, oh God, I'm too close. Do you see he gets confident and then he moves away? And now she pets him and he goes really still. He was wiggling a lot and then he goes really still and lip licks. That's how you know he's feeling, oh God, that's scary. Okay, I like you, but that was scary when you touched me. And now he's feeling a little bit better. Good. So that was a perfect interaction with this dog. Short, to the point. Here's that Lola.
Yeah.
Okay. Management. So management's really important with working with fearful dogs because obviously fearful dogs have some issues, but flight would be the one that I would be most concerned about depending on the situation, depending on the dog. I like to work with fearful dogs on a martingale collar. That's this collar over here on the left. It does tighten as they pull, so there's no fear that they can back out of it and it will come off their head if it's fitted correctly. And then the Freedom harness, we sell them here at the store. They're fabulous. They have 2 points of contact, one on the chest, one on the back. And the back has the same martingale. So when they pull to back out of it, it tightens and they can't actually get out. These can be literally lifesavers for fearful dogs. Fencing is important, making sure if you're using a backyard, you have a privacy fence or you have a fence that's very, very, very secure. We love baby gates. And using them at doorways is really important, especially the front door. They can bolt out of the front door before you know it. For those who watch The Dog Whisperer, I'm not a big fan, but one thing that he does say that I think is easy to remember that pertains precisely to fearful dogs is no touch, no talk, no eye contact. It's really important for strangers or anybody interacting with the dog who doesn't know the dog that they're not touching the dog or looking at the dog or petting the dog. That's super, super important. That's how you're going to build their confidence, which we'll talk about. A lot of people think that when you have a fearful dog, you should have, let's say Amy has a fearful dog, and she's trying to get her dog to like me, and so she gives me a piece of chicken, and I go, here dog, have some chicken. And the dog is doing that approach avoidance, not sure if it wants, and then it takes the chicken and it runs away. We tried a few more times, and eventually the dog decides, I'm just way too fearful for this, and the dog leaves. That's the example of the worst training setup you could do. It's a little bit like, imagine if all you ever wanted in your entire life was an iPad. You wanted one for 3 years. And I'm your friend, and I decide to get you one. And I bring it to you in a box. Imagine you are, what's something you're terrified of? Mice?
Snakes.
Snakes. Snakes, that's a good one. So imagine I bring you this box with this iPad in the bottom, and there are 100 baby snakes, and they're almost spilling out of the box. And I say, don't worry, your iPad's in the bottom. And I leave it in your house, and I back up. You really, 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 really have wanted that iPad forever. You have no way of getting it for yourself because you don't make very much money. So you decide to go for it. You stick your hand in the box as fast as you possibly can and you go, and you pull out the iPad and you're holding it like this and you throw it on the floor and then you kick the box to the other side of the room. And you take a minute and you're like, and all your adrenaline and everything is pumping and you feel a little upset. A few hours later, you feel calm enough to actually pick up the iPad. What are you thinking about? Snakes. So for a very, 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 very long time after that experience, every time you pick up that iPad, or maybe every other time, you are going to have that memory of the snakes. It's the same thing when we ask a stranger to give our dog a piece of chicken because our dog's scared of that stranger. The dog's like, I really, really, really want that piece of chicken. And you sort of taint the chicken with a stranger. It's the same scenario. It's just a bit different for us. For dogs who are scared of novel objects or environments, try to plan ahead. And, if you have a really fearful dog, don't plan on going for a long walk unless you have a couple of hours, because they're probably going to take a long time. There's probably going to be things that they're very scared of. You should let them investigate at their own pace as much as possible. Protocols for change. Unfortunately, there is no cure for fearfulness. Certain things like the genetic component is permanent, it's there. Certain traumatizing events might as well be permanent. Management is key. So then why do behavior modification if there's no hope? We do behavior modification with fearful dogs because for very fearful dogs without regular behavior modification, fearful behavior it's one of the behaviors that tends to stay the same or get worse over time without some sort of intervention.
Sorry.
That's okay. And the intervention can be as simple as taking a training class for fearful dogs or giving your dog a rawhide when your friends come over. It depends on your dog's level of fear. Some things affect how quickly the dog's going to get over it. How long has the dog been doing the fearful behavior? How old were they if it was a traumatizing event? Is it one thing or is it 20 things? If it's 20 things, can you control all 20 things? That's supposed to say threshold. Is the dog fearful from 100 feet? Or can they get within 5 feet and they're feeling pretty good? And then the big, big, big one, owner commitment and compliance. Because I have seen owners take dogs that I thought were never going to have a chance in a million years at getting better, and they made them significantly better. And I've also seen owners where I'm like, that's a pretty easy case, and the dog just stayed the same even after 6 sessions of training. So it's really the day-to-day stuff that makes a big difference. Motivation is important. When I work with a fearful dog, I like to use several different kinds of treats, not just one. They tend to get fed up with one quickly. And you always need something that's going to be a little more enticing than the thing they're scared of. Natural balance is great. We use it here. It's the dog food roll. Freeze-dried liver. Cat treats are great for some fearful dogs. Plain boiled chicken is a big favorite. It generally doesn't upset their stomachs, and most dogs really fall all over themselves for it. Hot dogs, steak. Any sort of meat treat is fabulous. What about other types of motivation, though? A lot of times fearful dogs won't eat. So that's where you have to get really creative and think, what does this dog actually want? And that's the big question. A lot of fearful dogs really like their crate. If your fearful dog really likes his or her crate, use that as your motivation. If your fearful dog really likes carrying something in its mouth, use that as the motivation. If they want to run, use that as the motivation. So I'm going to show you a video, and this is probably going to take almost the rest of the time to see this video, but it's a really good video. So this is really interesting because, again, we never get what we think we're going to get when we video dogs. We're always like going to get one thing and the dog's like, nah, I'm not doing that. Sorry for your PowerPoint presentation. It's kind of a long video, but I think it's worth watching. So this is a dog. I was trying to show you leash tension, and she just decided, I can't take it. She liked the den. So I brought her back in as her reward, and then I called her out. Look at that fearful behavior. Head lowered, body stiff. I'm like, can you do this right here? She said no. What about right there? She said no. So you can see how fearful she is. This is not normal behavior for a dog to not eat these delicious meat treats. Her ears are back. And with fearful dogs, the other thing about fearful dogs is they take 3 times as long to work with as a not fearful dog. You know, so I decide she doesn't even want to be with me, so I shut the door. And I'm on the other side of the door, and then I open up and I say, now do you want to come out? And she said, okay, I can move a bit. And I said, okay, we're on to something. I know what she wants. She wants me to go away. So I give her a few treats and then I shut the door. So that's her reward. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about alternate motivation. Now she's scratching on the door. How confident is that? We love pushy behaviors in fearful dogs, and she came out. So I'm celebrating. And she's like, oh God, that's scary. And then she kind of gets like, I don't know if I want to be out here, if I want to go back in. And I make the decision for her that it's time to go back in. Because she's not really deciding well on her own, and she's not making progress, and she's not eating. So I tell her, you need to go back in now. Leash tension, loose leash when she goes in. Little tension to show her the way, loosen the leash as soon as she started moving. The very split second she started moving, and then I give her that alone time reward again. And she's building her confidence. So I say, okay, she's feeling a little more confident, come on out. So she's trying to leave. So we do this for a while. She still doesn't want to eat my treats. And she's doing a lot of lip licking, a lot of crouching, the tail is tucked, all of this stuff. And with fearful dogs, when they're at this level, a leash is really, really, really important, because if I didn't have this leash on, I wouldn't even be working with the dog. So I decided to put her back in. Tight leash there. She wants to go. I say no. Loose leash as soon as she goes in. A lot of people will tell you that a tight leash is a bad thing. For a fearful dog, being confident in the direction you want them to go is not a bad thing. You're going to make them feel a little more secure. I don't know what I'm doing here, so keep that in mind. So I'm like building this, what I'm doing with her as we're going, and I'm trying to find what works for her. I know going in the den works for her. And that time she kind of touched me, and so I pet her and she licks me. So I'm like, that's cool. And of course I go too long. You know you go too long when they pull away before you do. And I say, okay, back in your den, because I messed up. So go back in your den, feel better, we'll try again, and I'll try to be better next time. See how conservative I am? Every 10 seconds I'm putting this dog back in the den, because if she's getting more and more fearful, I'm going to get to aggression eventually. I want her to go up and come back down, go up and come back down, go up and come back down, so that she never gets to that point where she's so fearful she can't function. So I stop touching her when she does the groveling. I don't want to reinforce the groveling. So that's when the timing becomes really important. She's licking me. Oh, good, I love that. And so I'm petting her because she's standing up for the first time when I'm touching her, so I'm really excited. So what about this? You know, I'm stuck on food because we're people and we're humans, and of course we're idiots, and we're like, this is easy, what about food? All dogs like food, right? How about some food?
So she's definitely looking for some other reward, right? Because you're giving her the food and she's not...
She's not looking for some other reward, but I have to find out what's rewarding for her. Because the food's not working, so I have to figure out what it is that's going to work. Petting, oh no, that's crouchy, so I'm going to move my hand slowly, right? I didn't jerk my hand away. You climbed in my lap. And now I don't know what to do, because I'm like, okay, now how do I find the motivation for this? Is this and then you have to ask yourself the question, is this internally motivating for this dog? Does she like this enough that this is the motivation? She seems to like it. So I'm petting her. She seems to like that. She's doing better. So that's cool. And then she moves away, and I decide to put her back, I think. Yeah, I decide to put her back for a minute. Because as humans, we always want to push them harder and harder and harder and harder. It's so, so, so important when you're working with fear behaviors to put her back. And I'm apologizing to the person videoing me. I'm like, I'm sorry this is taking so long, but I don't want her to feel like I don't want her to feel like I don't understand, and if I keep pushing her and pushing her and pushing her, she's going to become more and more fearful. So I take her back out, and now look. How cool, right? She jumped right in my lap. She said, I got it. I love you. And I say, I love you too. And then I'm like, oh God, what's the motivation? So I'm constantly asking myself, what's the motivation? Off. Okay, so now we're using off. Now I'm going to try again. I don't know why this is. Apparently an hour is too long for my computer. And she climbs back up. And she's sitting up, and so she gets off. So she's gotten off a few times herself without me really controlling it. So, you know, watching this video, I'm like, wow, I should have done this much sooner, but I finally pick up on it. You know, we're only human, you're not going to be perfect, but you want to try to watch as much as you can. Yay, that's so good, okay. So this is when I start getting it, you know, I start learning now. And I'm like, that's it, that's the motivation. Get on? Okay. That's the reward. Can you come get on? Come get on. Good. Good. Can I pick you up? Great. Wow. Oh, and you're licking my face? Okay. So I show her gradually, you can trust me. And this is a dog who literally, before we were shooting this video, was growling at me and wouldn't let me put a collar on her. I mean, there's a reason why she's using a slip lead, because I couldn't get a collar on her. And now she's letting me pick her up. And I know this is a long video for a seminar, but the reality is that it's only 8 minutes, not even. So it doesn't take that long to build confidence, but it takes a lot of thought about the situation. And it's not easy, you know, it's helpful to work with somebody else so they can tell you when you're not getting it. Clicker training, I think, is important with fearful dogs. There's a lot of great clicker training stuff out there. If you go to YouTube, Kiko Pup is one of my favorite clicker people, and they actually make clickers. This one's called Multi-Clicker, and it's got a volume setting, which is really important for fearful dogs, so you get a nice soft click, because sometimes fearful dogs, it can be a little too much. The nice thing about clickers, you can work at a distance with your dog, and you can have strangers do the clicking, and it's not overwhelming. Once they've formed that once you've trained them a lot with the clicker, then they have this emotional connection to the clicker that's really happy, and they love the clicker, so then you can start transferring it, and that's how you can transfer it to other people. And I'll give you a protocol at the end in just a few minutes. The last thing that I want to do, sorry, I flipped through too quick. There's just one more video that I want to watch, and then that'll be it. The last thing that I want to talk about is a backup recall. This is another literally lifesaver for a fearful dog. Depending on your dog's level of fear, this has actually saved a dog's life in my care who was running toward Connecticut Avenue full speed. But because I did this probably 15 times every walk, he got it and he turned right around and he came to me. And this is not a dog who was in any way, shape, or form a normal dog. See how I call him back and I give the treat? He grovels, and so I just back away and give him some space. I'm not doing that. I'm not feeding into your grovelly, submissive behavior. And he says, oh, what about, can I come closer to you? So we work a bit here. With every fearful dog, you have to adjust. If I was doing this with him every day, he's going to get better and better and better and better. So all we're doing, I'm going to do it again so you'll be able to see it again. All I'm doing is we're going to walk along. We're going to walk along. He's eating. They all work at their own pace. You can't push a fearful dog. And then I'm going, come! Yay, puppy! And then I'm giving him a treat and I'm backing up. When he does that flip over belly up for him, that's not a behavior I want to in any way reinforce because he's a fearful dog. So when he does that, by me backing up, I'm disagreeing with him. So by me ignoring him in that situation, I'm saying, this is not what I want you to do. If you do that, I'm going away. And that worked for this particular dog because he likes people. For some dogs, that might be the reward as you're going away. So you have to be careful. So we do it one more time. Puppy, come! Yay, puppy! Good. So you can see how if I did this 10 times every walk over the course of how many times your dogs go out a day? 4 times a day. 10 days later, you've practiced this.
A lot.
10 times a walk, 4 times a day. A lot. Thank you, I like that answer. But you get it. It doesn't take long. And then you build this memory in the dog so that if for whatever very, very unfortunate, horrible reason they slip their collar or whatever they're in, your human instincts are probably going to kick in like mine did when my dog slipped his lead. And I went, wait, and he's fearful, so of course he went, I'm not getting any closer to you, and he's backing up into Connecticut, and then I go, puppy, come! And he comes flying full force at me because we had practiced this so much. And when you have a fearful dog, sometimes things happen, and you can plan all you want, and you can try to manage all you want, but it's not always going to be perfect. So this can be a good emergency precaution to take. And that's it. Any questions about anything that we talked about? I know we covered a ton of information.
So how much do they generalize, like you worked with that little dog and got it to climb on your lap. How much is that going to help the next person
So
that approaches that dog?
fearful dogs, fear is one of the slowest behaviors to modify. And I know this isn't a great answer, but it depends. It depends on the dog. Some dogs may get it instantly. Other dogs, a lot of it went back to those factors that determine prognosis.
So
How long has it been going
probably
on?
a lot of these dogs, we have to work with them, and then we have to train the adopters somewhat.
Yeah,
to do those same
yeah.
things.
Yeah, the genetic component is always going to be there. So if you have a fearful dog, you're working for the life of your dog to combat the dog getting worse or to make the dog slightly better. And you can make your dog much better depending on the dog. Some dogs don't. It has a lot to do with how often you're willing to work with your dog. I have these protocols here, so you can take one and pass it on. This is a sort of a very general, very, very, very general, because each dog is different, but it's a very general protocol for working with fearful dogs. The number one with fearful dogs is protecting your dog. Encouraging other people to stay away, not putting them in situations where they're going to feel uncomfortable. Or if you have to put them in a situation where they're uncomfortable and somebody comes up and says, may I pet your dog? Stepping in front of your dog and saying, no, sorry, my dog bites or something. Lie.